A very good evening and welcome to the India Development Debate. I'm Tamanna Inamdar. At a time when unemployment is a growing concern, when countries around the world and of course states are concerned about increasing jobs, about stemming job losses which have been caused by the coronavirus pandemic, there is another kind of almost perverse movement for going vocal for local. This is the need that chief ministers of various states have found in the last few days to announce reservations of jobs for locals. The latest among them is the Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan, who has declared today that all state government jobs will be given only to locals of Madhya Pradesh. Before this, his predecessor Kamal Nath also wanted to reserve 70% of all industrial jobs in the state for locals. They aren't the only ones. We know that the Jharkhand Chief Minister has made a similar announcement and he's planning to go into some kind of reservation. So has the state of Haryana. Now, we know that the cry for vocal for local is an important one right now, but it was meant to be to improve the quality of Indian production and products and boost exports. It's not meant to indulge in this regionalism and ensure that only people within your state get the jobs. The biggest question is, where are the jobs? Now, recent data is showing that job losses caused due to the pandemic are much more than we possibly thought. That's the big story that we're tracking on the show this evening. And before we move any further, I want to play out for you exactly what the Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh, Shivraj Singh Chauhan, said today.
आज मध्य प्रदेश सरकार ने एक महत्वपूर्ण फैसला किया है। मध्य प्रदेश की शासकीय नौकरियां अब केवल मध्य प्रदेश के बच्चों को दी जाएगी। इसके लिए हम आवश्यक कानूनी प्रावधान कर रहे हैं। मध्य प्रदेश के संसाधन मध्य प्रदेश के बच्चों के लिए।
All right, so the promise made is that from henceforth all state government jobs in Madhya Pradesh will be reserved for the youth of that place, for the locals of that place. Remember, nearly 13 lakh people came back into Madhya Pradesh. This was the migration which took place, the reverse migration which took place due to the coronavirus pandemic and the lockdown. Now, contrast this with the other kind of data that we are seeing. We know now that nearly 5 million salaried jobs were lost just in the month of July. In fact, in the spate of all of the job losses, the salaried segment has been hit the most. Why am I talking about salaried segment? Because this is the most coveted segment of jobs as well. In fact, fresh ILO data shows that 41 lakh youth have lost jobs in India due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, contrast this with the policies that are being announced. Instead of increasing the pie of jobs, there is this rush to sort of reserve jobs for certain segments. To speak on this issue, I'm joined now first by Mahesh Vyas of the CMIE. Mr. Vyas, great to have you on the show. I just want to first get your response to the story that we're discussing today, and of course then we'll go into some of the data that you very consistently put out on unemployment. The fact that right now, when the focus should be on increasing the number of jobs and reducing the levels of unemployment, there seems to be this scramble to reserve jobs, which are anyway very few, government jobs that is, for locals.
Yes, there is this pressure that has been building for quite some time. Mind you, this is not the first phase in which we have heard stories regarding reservations for locals in government jobs, in private jobs, in jobs in general. State governments have been saying this quite consistently ever since the new jobs crisis began. And I think the new jobs crisis began from 2016 after demonetization. And right since then, whether it is in almost every local election or a state election, this has been an important thing. But we should learn from the recent lessons that we have seen that migrants are quite at pain in alien lands if they are not welcome there. even after they are working there. So if we have a policy which explicitly says that migrants or people from other nations, other regions, other states are not welcome, it's not a very good thing to do. We need to see this in the broader sense of the importance of migration, the importance of labor moving freely in any country. At least within a country, labor should move freely. So if there are reservations, it moves against the basic principles of uniform development. And many states that do not have a major unemployment problem are also indulging in this. And this is not actually very good for the long-term growth and the youth of the country.
Let me come to, the data on unemployment, Mr. Vyas, and I think it's important to contrast what state governments are actually doing on jobs with what the ground reality is. Now, your latest data shows that salaried jobs seem to be the most vulnerable, and the youth segment, that is your 25 years plus, are also the most vulnerable, who seem to be losing the largest number of jobs. Is that correct?
That's true. The hit is mostly in younger age generation people, less than 25 years of age, do get hit the most, and that is the case even now during the lockdown. And that's quite stressful, because people have just completed their education and are stepping out into the labor markets, and they don't find jobs. The ones that did find jobs recently lose their jobs. They're the first to lose jobs. Because if you're still fresh in a company and not trained sufficiently, you're not delivering anything to the company gets rid of you first. So there is a serious problem over there. And there is a bigger problem in the lockdown period with respect to salaried jobs. Now, it's like this, that the vulnerable jobs are the non-salaried jobs, in the sense that if I was not a salaried employee, but if I was a daily wage earner, the moment there's a lockdown, I lose my job. But the good thing is, as soon as the lockdown is lifted, even partially, I can go and get my job back. I can get back to my trade, which is, let's say I'm a plumber or I'm some daily wage earner of that kind. But if I'm a salaried job, and if I lose my job, then it is very difficult for me to get my job back again. Mind you, it's difficult in the placements. Young people do see how difficult to get the right placement. So after getting the placement, then I lose my job. Getting it back is very difficult. So the loss of salaried jobs, which is getting worse month by month, is actually very worrisome.
So, Mr. Vyas, I'd like you to explain this to me, because over the last few weeks, the data has actually shown an improvement in the numbers of those employed. And it was being seen as a sign that there is some kind of recovery in the economy, that many of those jobs which were lost, or some of those jobs which were lost in April, May, has started to return in June and July. Are you seeing that trend not sustaining?
So, this is really the biggest problem. So the headline number tells us that unemployment has come down and employment is back. So both those numbers look good. The employment rate has gone up and the unemployment rate has come down. So this is all is hunky-dory, so to say. But the problem is that while most of the jobs have come back, a significant number have not. And those that have not come are predominantly salaried jobs. So I'll just give you a number. Compared to the average employment in the country in 2019-20, the fiscal year 19-20, we have a loss of 11 million jobs today. Okay, so the total loss is 11 million, but the loss of salaried jobs is 18 million. So we have a very big deficit in salaried jobs, 18 million jobs deficit in salary. But there is an increase in the number of farmers. There is a small reduction in daily wage earners. Business people are back to their normal jobs, but the deficit is very big in salaried jobs. So it is the statistics is correct to say that employment is back and that unemployment has come down, but the quality of this recovery is very, very poor. The educated youth, the salaried employees have taken a hit,
Absolutely.
which is getting worse month by month.
Absolutely, and this is the kind of pool that needs to be expanded by policymakers. Thank you so much, Mahesh Vyas, for joining us. For your view on the discussion. Well, it's a discussion which needs to be continued, and to speak with me now is journalist and economist Puja Mehra, R. Sriram, resident editor at the Economic Times, and Amitabh Tiwari, political analyst, joins us on the show. Welcome to all of you. Let me begin with Puja Mehra. Puja, what do you make of this announcement? And mind you, this is not the first time such a declaration has been made. Even the state of Maharashtra has said they want to reserve jobs. Others have too. But no one really follows through. Why do you think such declarations are made again and again? And to what end?
I think it's probably a political matter before the by-elections that are probably due in the state. The state government wants to create this mood of there being options for the youth, which are clearly suffering because of the COVID-19 situation. Job losses is the data that is showing. I think we should see more of politics in this than any real intention of following it up with policy measures. Because I'm not a legal expert, but I was checking with some lawyers, and they seem to suggest that in the case of the latest Madhya Pradesh decision, at least it may fall foul with some of the constitutional aspects, and perhaps may even need supporting legislation in Parliament, which may not happen. So I think this is just plain politics.
Clearly, it is plain politics. The question is that should it be business as usual and politics and policy as usual at a time like this? Sriram, the reason. Yes, I can, Puja. Sriram, the reason I think this is an important subject to discuss is that contrasted with the high unemployment numbers, contrasted with the fact that many of these states are willing and ready to tweak their labor policies to attract industry. They want to give land banks and easier process to companies to come and set up. And on the other hand, you come out with policy and announcements like this. That question for R. Sriram.
Hi, Tamanna. I think a couple of points we need to clarify first and foremost. I think this announcement by the Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister, Mr. Shivraj Singh Chauhan, is largely for jobs in the government sector, in the local government sector. From whatever I could gather from his speech or whatever I managed to read, I don't think it applies across the board to private sector. And there would be huge problems in making it apply to the private sector or non-governmental sector. So I think it largely applies to the government sector. The second point, I think, as Puja rightly pointed out, there is a lot of politics in it. There is a lot of optics in it. I don't think any government which has announced in the past or which is announced today or which is going to announce later on is ever going to really follow through in the true letter and spirit, because it is difficult to make such a thing happen. You will fall afoul of the laws of the country and of the constitution, which basically give every citizen the right to go anywhere in the country and find a job and lead a life. So I don't think this can really be implemented. There is a fair bit of politics and optics in it. I think the third point which we should also recognize is that after this migrant labor crisis that happened in April and May, many of the states that have been sending migrants to other parts of the country, whether it is UP, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, have probably become a little more wary of their people going out somewhere in another state, in a far off state, and getting stuck because of a crisis of this kind. So there is a thinking among some of these state governments that instead of letting our people go out to all these states, why don't we give them job opportunities here, whereby they can work in the local state, in the areas nearby, and in their own state instead of going to a far off place. But that is easier said than done. There are a lot of issues with doing that. I mean, you really need to get private sector investment activity booming again in these states. That is obviously not happening now and will not happen for some time. I mean, till the correct policies are in place. So to sum up very quickly, I think this is largely for government sector, so it will not affect private sector and not affect bulk of the job creation. It is politics. It will probably not be implemented in the same way as I think Puja made that point. So I'm just reiterating that point here. Tamanna?
Sriram, let me come to you again on this point. The state of Uttar Pradesh also, for example, wanted to start some kind of a bureau and sort of an interface between private industry and citizens of the state. The state of Madhya Pradesh also tried something like that, but it hasn't really worked. Do you think that governments right now have their priority right in terms of addressing the issue of unemployment? And this is across states. Like you mentioned earlier, there are several states cutting across party lines that have made such promises in the past. Nothing has come of them. Why do they keep doing it?
To answer this question, Tamanna, I think we need to look at some of the initiatives that the various state governments are doing in the midst of this COVID pandemic and what they are likely to do in future. I think several state governments, including Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, probably Punjab, have kickstarted, even Maharashtra it has happened, have kickstarted some kind of construction stroke infrastructure work. And that is drawing in a fair bit of some amount of jobs and employment. But the big growth in jobs, employment, investment will only happen when private sector activity kicks off in a big way. And private sector actually not only starts producing, at least 90 to 100% of their capacity, but also starts thinking of new investments. Now, that is obviously not happening now because the situation is still fluid with the pandemic and people are afraid of traveling. And there are mini and local lockdowns in various places. So we got to wait and see. I think some state governments have been a bit enterprising. Uttar Pradesh, for instance, I think is going full ahead with the expressway highway development there also. A lot of state governments are actually going out and wooing foreign investors, especially those who are thinking of relocating from China or are thinking of trying to set up a factory here. We know what's happening with the Apple outsourcing companies, whether it's Pegatron or Visitron or Foxconn. I think a lot of state governments have been wooing them. So there is a fair amount of work that is being done, but it's too early to say how successful it will be because you really need the economy to open up in a full way and you really need the private sector, some kind of animal spirits to come back. It is not come back as yet, obviously. It will take some time for it to come back. And it's very early to say whether these state governments have been successful or not because you don't know. And obviously their initiatives are also limited by the situation on the ground and their desire to fully focus on the pandemic and treat this mega problem of COVID.
All right. Puja, I wanted to understand what more could have really been done. Sriram says it will take time. There are some states which have devised policies to kind of attract private industry and improve unemployment. But in the interim, if you look at what most states have done, they have fallen back on schemes like Narega to give employment to the many who are now waiting, especially the migrant labor coming back. Do you think we should just look at this as a political need that is being fulfilled and hope that the states will actually go and do something about improving jobs?
Tamanna, I see a bit of confusion in the thinking itself. I agree with what Sriram is saying, that the economy is not operating right now at full capacity and there's no way it possibly can for as long as we are not back at a normal pace of economic activity, which can probably only take place once a vaccination is available for COVID-19. So that is the implementation part, because as you know, even before the outbreak of the pandemic, the job situation was not good. It has not been good for quite some time. So there's a whole set of policy bottlenecks that have to be removed for India's economic growth to generate jobs. That situation remains. But in the interim, before we are even back to that situation of pre-COVID outbreak, I thought that the central government has given a new economic philosophy of Atmanirbharta, which I don't know how does that square up with individual states declaring these kind of reservations. I mean, this is a sign of insecurity, not a sign of Atmanirbharta. If one state thinks that it cannot open its government jobs to people from other states. I think what is needed is, and even at the central government level, I think there is a problem with Atmanirbharta getting implemented in the form of licensing of imports, curbs on trade, etc. This is the kind of economic policies that India has followed in the 1970s, which led to low job creation capacity in the economy. And we are repeating those mistakes all over again. So I think there is a complete failure of vision. There is a complete failure of understanding of what is it that the economic policy needs to be at this point in time, both in terms of in the interim when you're dealing with a pandemic where the economy is not functioning fully functional, and when it will be able to function at without any residual lockdown impact, but it will have to correct for all of the policy mistakes of the past decades, and the growth will begin to generate jobs. So these are two separate policy objectives which need two separate kinds of policies and thinking. But I think both the kind of thinking that we're seeing at the states and the center right now is kind of muddle-headed. What we need to do is go back to ensuring that there is ease of doing business, that we do not have restrictive trade policies, that we play to our strengths, that we are not insecure. All of that large, mine of policy recommendations sitting in files in various ministries needs to be brought out, and all of those things need to be done. We have discussed this for 10 years now.
Okay. No, absolutely. I think the point about confusion is an important one. What is the kind of message that you are trying to put out? When India says, let's go vocal for local, this is definitely not what one has in mind. Amitabh, you have said that there is a method to this, or there is a logic behind this, considering that a large number of migrant workers have come back. But this has been the same trope. State after state has announced and not really implemented it. Do you think voters are still falling for this?
See, we are living in tough times, and governments across the world and even central banks do not have clarity on how the growth will pan out in the next couple of years. People coming back do strain the state resources, and as you said, Narega has come as a bit of a help to some of these state governments. But unemployment issue is a real issue, and it's always been one of the top 5 issues across elections. So there is a lot of pressure on the state governments, more so in the Hindi heartland as well as on the eastern side, from where a lot of people used to migrate to industrial states to provide gainful employment to these people. And some of these announcements, including labor reforms by UP and MP and other states, and even the reservations for locals in state government jobs as well as in private jobs, is a step in that direction. Again, do people fall for it? Issues across polls, across
Sriram, just to look at this in the context of a large number of people now having moved back to their home states, and not all of them have returned to the big cities to work, etc. It's the stated purpose of state governments to really give opportunity to these people. I remember when I was speaking with the Maharashtra Industries Minister, and I asked him, now all of the labor has gone back, what are you going to do? He said, now our locals have more opportunity. Do you think that state governments will now continue to press down this path and may be tempted to try and fiddle with the reservation even in the private space, as the clamor for jobs will only grow?
And I don't think reservation in jobs in this fashion will really work. As I said before, and I think some of the others have also made this point, it will fall a fall of law and will fall a fall of our constitution. Our constitution gives everybody the right to go wherever they want in the country, settle down and do whatever job they want to do. I don't see how state governments can actually they can do a bit of affirmative action. They can try and give some preference to locals in some jobs, but they can't absolutely block anybody else from coming and joining from other parts of the country from joining the workforce. Nor can they have a policy which says that 90% or 70% or even 100% of a particular government job in a particular, let's say construction, for instance, will only hire locals. I don't think that can happen. And private sector will not happen because it completely defeats the whole purpose of, your entire purpose of trying to attract private sector investment. What is the point of going out to and talking to foreign investors and asking them to set up plants in your state and competing in other states for foreign investment, an investment that is coming in from China or from elsewhere, and then telling them that, look, you got to hire locals and I won't let you hire anybody from any other state. I mean, they will walk away and go to the nearest state that gives them the freedom of operation. So it is not going to work. I mean, politicians can make these noises. Some initiative can be taken in terms of giving some kind of a preference or some kind of an affirmative action, but any hard implementation of any kind of a reservation will, I suspect, I'm not a legal person here and I don't know the law that, on this issue, but I suspect it will be struck down very forcefully by the courts. I don't think it will be implemented. Politicians can talk. I mean, I suspect that they will do that as elections come and go and as governments continue to tot up a support. In some states, politicians will talk and will make this noise.
We have to. That's a good point. Yeah, the politicians will make noise. The politicians will continue to make noise. I think it's time even voters begin to see through it, because close to none of these promises have been implemented. They will only harm even if they are. Really, it goes against the right that every Indian has to work and live peacefully in any part of this great country. Let's hope that realization dawns. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us on the show this evening.